on, and all they had to do was do it back there. Uh-huh. Okay. Technology. Okay, so here we go. So as I mentioned, this took place during Passion Week. So a couple of days before this event, Jesus had ridden into Jerusalem, what we call Palm Sunday, and all of the people were saying, Hosanna, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Somewhere in the middle of that week, Jesus and his disciples were leaving the Temple Mount. And as they're leaving the Temple Mount, they're pointing out, oh, look at all the beautiful things here, the stones. And one of the most famous things about that temple was when Herod had renovated it, the large entrance doors were plated and covered over with gold on the eastern side of it. So when the sun came up in the morning and it just came over that the Mount of Olives and the sunlight hit it, it was just brilliant, shining, these golden doors. And so the disciples were pointing out, oh, look at our beautiful temple. And Jesus got their attention by saying, you know what, guys? There's going to be a time when there's not one stone left on top of another. And that puzzled them and intrigued them and may have horrified them, for that matter. And so that's when they asked the question, two questions. And we kind of got into this last week. They said, what signs are you going to tell us about? And when is this going to happen? So last week we kind of looked at the fact that Jesus started off by talking to them about the signs. And I did mention that it really helps to get in mind, okay, you've got them. They started off at the Jewish temple. You've got Jesus, who's the Son of God, but he's also the Jewish Messiah, talking to 12 Jewish men about what God is about to do with the Jewish people. Are you seeing a trend there? All right. So a question I didn't really spend much time on last week, so you'll notice right about halfway down on the front sheet of your, did you fold it like a little bulletin? Yeah, right there about halfway down. Ask yourself these questions. Did these disciples, these 12 men, did they understand what we know as the concept of the New Testament church? That's a rhetorical question which I will go ahead and answer. No. They didn't have a clue. They were all Jewish, and you'll realize when you get over into the book of Acts, it was an issue. God had to literally give Peter a vision saying, Peter, it's okay to go share the gospel with a Roman centurion, Cornelius. So they hadn't crossed that bridge yet. These guys were thinking in terms of Jesus being the Jewish Messiah who was going to come and redeem, save the Jewish people from the Roman occupying force and set up a glorious kingdom. That was their expectation. So these Jewish men, they didn't have the church in mind at all. So the second question is, did they understand the future role of the Gentiles in God's plan? And the answer to that is probably not. I've often wondered, after Jesus, you remember when he loaded, or he didn't load them, but he told all the guys, okay, let's get in the boat and we're going to go across the Sea of Galilee. And they got over there, and the man we call the maniac of Gadara, and he came to them. This guy was a Gentile. And he wanted to become, after Jesus had cast all the demons out of him, he wanted to become one of his disciples. And remember, Jesus said, no, go back to your home, to your family and friends, and tell them what great things the Lord, in other words, the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, has done for you. And he went back to the cities of the Decapolis. Those were Greek-speaking Gentile cities that were all scattered right there in Israel. I've often wondered if the disciples thought, he cares about Gentiles? Now, they already knew he cared about Samaritans because they had gone through Samaria and met the Samaritan woman and all of the people there in the city of Sychar. But Jesus cared about Gentiles also. But it was still news to them that God's plan of salvation was going to be spread to everybody. So they weren't really expecting that. And then the third question you can ask yourself is, did Jesus answer his disciples with their Jewish expectations in mind, or did he speak over their head? Now, sometimes we do that. Sometimes you'll say something to somebody knowing they're not going to comprehend what you're talking about. I'm looking at a couple of you folks that have been teachers. and you're teaching children or teenagers. Do you sometimes end up speaking over their head? And you know. But anyway, was Jesus intentionally speaking over their head? I don't think so. I think he was trying to literally tell these Jewish men what lay ahead and what lay in the future for the Jewish nation. And so we'll pick up kind of where we left off last week. If you open on the inside of it, the inside page there on your left-hand side is the question about the signs. And tried to cover that pretty well last week, so I'm not going to repeat everything that we did. There were 3 points there. Do not be deceived by false messiahs. And I'll tell you, ever since Jesus died and was resurrected and went back to heaven, there have been a series of people that claiming to be the answer to all of our spiritual problems. They were claiming to be the Messiah. And so that's not something that's a new concept. Now, the ultimate false Messiah is going to be the person that we call the Antichrist. Don't ask me who he is because I don't have a clue. But he'll be the ultimate false Messiah. So don't be deceived by false messiahs. The next thing I said was don't be terrified. And you look there at Matthew 24, beginning of verse 6. He says, you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. Be not troubled. See that you be not troubled. And that's characteristic of our day. And then the next thing I said is don't be surprised by persecution. Now what I would like to point out is towards the bottom of that page, I said there are remarkable parallels between what Jesus said right here and the opening set of plagues that are found in Revelation chapter 6. And this is not just something that I came up with. Actually, one of my instructors, Dr. Stuart Custer, instructed us with this. And if any of you have seen the book Things to Come by Dwight Pentecost, Dr. Pentecost goes just line by line down there and says, okay, there's a correspondence here. That passage in Revelation chapter 6, some people call the first 4 plagues there the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. How many of you have ever heard of that? Okay. There's dozens of interpretations of what that stands for. But the first seal in Revelation, I think, does point out the Antichrist coming. And he's riding, I think it says on a white horse, but he's a false Messiah. And probably rising up to power, maybe in the chaos after the rapture. Right? So the second seal is war breaks out. And, of course, in Matthew, he talks about wars and rumors of wars. The same language is found in Mark and in Matthew and in Luke. The third seal there in Revelation chapter 6 is famine, people dying for lack of food. The fourth one is just a seal called death, just all manner of disease and pestilence and other things that cause death. It's very interesting. The fifth seal is martyrs in Revelation. And Jesus points out that people would persecute and would kill and betray one another during this time of great unrest. Right? And so then there's an earthquake that corresponds to the sixth seal. You say, well, why am I pointing this out? Right at the bottom of that inside page, left-hand page there, I put a simplified timeline for what we call the period of the tribulation. Now, some of you maybe that are my age or even a little younger remember back in the days of the old-time prophecy conference. Anybody ever go to one where they had the big, Manon, we're dating ourselves, okay. But the big banner stretched across the front of the church, yeah, I've been through a few of those. This is not nearly as detailed as that. But my understanding, this is basically a dispensational understanding. I think it's a biblical understanding of what's coming next, is for the church, for believers today. I don't think we have to be looking for a sign. The Bible just says that Jesus Christ can come back for his church at any time. And one of the things I'll emphasize as I try to bring this to a close today is that we just need to be watching. Right? But if you want to study the concept of the rapture, Jesus Christ coming back for his church, look at the last half of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. You can also look at 1 Corinthians 15, where there's a lot of emphasis on resurrection, and you get towards the end of that chapter, and it talks about our bodies being changed. I think the opening verses of John chapter 14, you believe in God, believe not also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions or dwellings. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself. I think those all refer to the promise of rapturing and taking the church out of this age. But after Jesus takes us out, chaos is going to break loose on this planet. And so the verses that we looked at last week, I think, describe really those opening 3.5 years of tribulation. And one of the ways in which the earth will deal with that chaos is they will center around some great leader who arises and seemingly has answers to their problems. Just think with me for a moment. I know this isn't in Matthew, but are there enough problems today that if somebody had genuine political answers, would the world coalesce around them and say, "Oh yes, be our leader"? The majority of people would. There would be some discerning folks that would say, "At what price is this guy? Where is this guy leading us to, and at what price?" But a lot of people would follow a political leader who said, "Oh, I've got the answer to all your problems." So, as you look at that timeline, I put rapture and then beginning of the tribulation there, and there's a little vertical line, and I got 3.5 years on either side. We think the tribulation is going to be 7 years long. There's several reasons for that. There's a couple of time periods that are lined out in the book of Revelation. There's another time periods that are given in the book of Daniel. If you really want to get into that, I'll talk about that some other time. But notice right in the middle, I put the little word abomination. Right? So what I want you to do is notice with me now the top of the right-hand page there. I guess it would be page 3 if I had numbered them. The question about times. Because if you look at Matthew 24 and you start, let's see exactly what that verse is. All right, at verse 15, it starts with the word when. And that's a chronological term, okay? So it's time. When you see, therefore, the abomination of desolation. This actually is a real road map or a real road sign for anybody of Jewish study or the Jewish religion. These men knew exactly what Jesus was talking about. And you'd be surprised even today that people that are just marginal Jews, they may not know that term, abomination of desolation. But if you were asked them, do you celebrate Hanukkah? Most Jews would go, oh, yeah. You need to follow up with the question of, why do you celebrate Hanukkah? All right, quick aside here. Can you tell me why they celebrate Hanukkah? My wife can't because she's heard this many times before. Okay, I've got notes there. There's a historical precedent. In the year 167-68 BC, a very unpleasant Greek-Syrian ruler named Antiochus Epiphanes swept with his armies through Israel, and he was determined to wipe out the Jewish religion. He tried pretty hard. He didn't wipe them out, but he tried hard. And especially they went to a little town. Well, they came into Jerusalem. They didn't destroy the temple. They defiled it. His soldiers went into the temple courtyard, and in the altar right out in front of the temple, they sacrificed a sow, a female pig. They went inside the tabernacle, or inside the temple, and they extinguished the sevenfold lamp, the menorah, that probably hadn't been lit for forever and ever and ever and ever. But the Jews would say, oh, that's our eternal flame that represents our relationship and our prayers to God. Well, they extinguished it. The Jews were not happy. But not long after that, they went to a nearby town named Modin, but there was an elderly priest there. And he and his sons, when they came into the town and they tried to compel the Jews there to blaspheme God, this elderly priest revolted. And his son, the most famous one, his name was Judas, or Judah, and they called him Judah the Hammer. It would be Judas Maccabeus. All right, and they started a revolt, and 3 years later they drove the Syrians out, and they actually reclaimed their temple area. They took out all of the filth and whatever that these Greek Syrians had put in there. They found one little container of sealed oil that had been blessed at some time in the past by a priest. And they thought, well, we'll relight our menorah. And they would say it would take them 7 days of prayers and whatever they did to to clean up their temple, to reconsecrate their temple. And they said, we're going to run out of oil and the light's going to go out. But it burned for 8 days. And they said it was a miracle from God. So that is all the historical background behind Hanukkah. You say, well, why are you going into this? Because that abomination of desolation, where a person would come in and would intentionally defile their temple, Daniel had predicted it. All the way back in Daniel, I think I've got your reference down there. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, he mentions it again in Daniel chapter 11 and Daniel chapter 12. This was Jewish history. It'd be like me asking you, why do we celebrate July 4th? All right? Because the Jews were proud about this. Their little army of Jewish, they weren't even soldiers. They were mostly farmers that revolted, but they drove the Greek Syrians out. And for the next 60, 70, 80 years until the Romans came in, they were semi-independent. And that was a real high point in their history. They knew about it. And so when Jesus said, if you see that abomination, somebody's coming to defile your temple where you worship God. He says, if you see that abomination, he says, you need to take note of that. So let's read the verses right there, beginning at verse 15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee unto the mountains. Jesus is looking into the future. It's still future for us. But he's seeing a day when the Antichrist will come. And some of this is speculative. I mentioned the book, Things to Come. There's quite a few people that have written about what we believe may happen in the tribulation. And let me give you a couple of things that are pretty clear indications. For one thing, right now, the Middle East is a war-torn disaster area. Right? But somebody is going to come along and is going to make peace with Israel to the place where the Israelis feel secure. And you say, oh, really? Now, if you get a chance to visit Israel, go. Renee and I have been. You feel pretty. There is good security in most of Israel, right? But you see the security everywhere. You know, you see their soldiers walking around, carrying their weapons with them. There are checks. The security is obvious. But if you read in Ezekiel chapter 38, especially around verse 11, it talks about a day in which people will dwell in Israel in unwalled villages. The idea is they're going to be so secure they don't have the soldiers walking around with Uzis, and they don't have all the security because they're at peace. Now it's going to be a very short-lived peace. And this Antichrist will make promises to them. Their temple will be rebuilt. There is not a Jewish temple on the Temple Mount in Israel right now. There's the Arab Dome of the Rock. And over to the side, one other side, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So I have no idea how there's going to end up being a Jewish temple there. I know on one of our trips we got to visit a place called the Temple Institute. And let me tell you, they have everything that they need to put that temple together probably in a matter of weeks. I mean, all the furnishings are already prepared. I'm sure that there are, plans, architect's drawings and everything. Probably all of literally the components, the stones or whatever they're going to build, it's ready to go. And they're very proud of that fact. So there will be a temple up there. And at some point, this world leader who has made promises to the Jews and made covenants or treaties with the Jews and has reestablished their temple and the worship there in Jerusalem, at some point he will break those promises. And so that is an extremely difficult time, will be an extremely difficult time for the Jewish people. Let me turn over to it in 2 Thessalonians, I believe is where it is. I'm doing this one from memory. Yes. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, beginning at verse 3. Paul almost sounds like Jesus here. He says, let no man deceive you, all right? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, he's talking about the day of the Lord and the tribulation period, shall not come except there come a falling away. That's the word apostasy first. And that the man of sin, and as far as we can tell, that's the Antichrist, shall be revealed. The son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, that is what the Antichrist will do. And when he sets himself up in this Jewish temple, there in Jerusalem, after he has made all these promises to the Jewish people, some of them will be deceived, but not all of them. Some of them will follow Jesus' words. They will run for the hills. Even if they didn't know that Jesus said to do that, they'll go, wait a minute. Not only is this guy not, he's not too good to be true, he's just not true, period. So when Jesus warned about the abomination of desolation, there will be a few Jewish people that go, oh, wait a minute. When some person defiles our temple by claiming that he is God and that we have to worship him, we can't stand for this. Now, most of you have studied enough to know that this one world government and this one world religion and this one world everything will not allow dissent. And that's the reason why Jesus goes ahead and says, you need to get out of there. And he's very clear about that. Then verse 16, then let them who are in Judea flee unto the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe to them that are with child, that are expecting, or to them that are nursing in those days. Pray that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Now notice a couple things there. He's obviously still speaking to a Jewish audience. He says, you wouldn't want to have to do this on the Sabbath, all right? Those of you who are in Judea and so forth, he's still talking to his Jewish disciples in that Jewish culture. Right? Verse 21 is very telling. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, never, ever, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Everybody see where we are there in Matthew? Now, when he talks about the elect, let's stop and think about this here for a moment, because there's a couple of passages, a couple of verses here in Matthew or in Mark, even in Luke, that if somebody takes the verse out of the context, you get a different flavor of it and a different application. There's a lot of people today that when they see the term elect, they think, oh, the church. Okay? Is the church the only group of people that God ever used the term elect to describe? All right? What would be another group of people that are considered to be God's elect? Okay. I thank you, Manon. I was not expecting that one, but yes, they are a very select group still in the future. Can anybody think of an elect group in the past? Still elect today. There are elect angels. I heard it somewhere back there. Yeah. God uses that term for the nation of Israel. They are his chosen people. And I think that's exactly what he's talking about right here. Right? So you look back again. Verse 22, except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved or delivered. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And God supernaturally intervenes to shorten this period of time. We're not going to go back tonight into the book of Daniel and talk about Daniel's 70 groups of 7. We call it 70 weeks. But there's one so-called prophetic week that still has not been fulfilled, and that's the reason why we think the tribulation is 7 years long. And all of the things that we talked about last week, I think, are going to occur towards the beginning of the tribulation. The events that, as we go farther down through Matthew 24, or if you were looking at Mark 13, I think bring you to the end of that tribulation period. And so Jesus now forcefully warns again, a second time, about a false Messiah. You see in verse 23, "Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is the Messiah, here is Christ." And Christ is simply the Greek vocabulary for the Jewish word Messiah. So you think about this, in the middle of that tribulation, that Antichrist is going to be sitting wherever in the temple in Jerusalem saying, "Worship me." There will be deceived people that say, "He's the answer to our problems. We'll do whatever he says. We'll take a mark on the forehead or the hand. We'll bow down to him. We'll be part of his economy." They'll go right along with it. Right? And so Jesus is warning again. He says, "If anyone shall say unto you, here's the Messiah," all right, or there he is. He says, "Don't believe him. Believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and they shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect." If you have studied the book of Revelation, you'll remember that it describes really three persons, an unholy trinity. It describes the Antichrist. It also describes another man that we don't know his name, obviously, but we often call him the false prophet. And he will point people to the Antichrist, much like John the Baptist pointed to Jesus. And this false prophet will do signs and wonders. He'll do miraculous things to convince people, worship the Antichrist. And both of them are going to be empowered by, the book of Revelation calls him the dragon, who is Satan. And so you have really an unholy trinity that are described there. Jesus is mentioning again, he says, they're going to be claiming to be the Messiah, but they aren't. Don't be deceived. Notice verse 25. "Behold, I have told you before." It's kind of like, I'm warning you. Are you listening? And I try to avoid looking at every current event and every political change and every natural disaster. Renee was telling me, I hadn't even seen the news, but she was telling me there was a big earthquake up in Alaska or something this evening, okay? Every day comes with something else that might get our attention, and you say, well, does this mean the Lord's coming back? Actually, I did choose the song tonight with particular intention. Any day, maybe today, could be the day that the Lord comes back. It doesn't matter what's on the news. Now, when he does come back, the things that Jesus is warning about will start being on the news. There will be an Antichrist. There will be people that are deceived. There will be famines, and there will be more bloodshed. I'm not going to have time to finish the rest of the notes here tonight, so come back next week. But next week I will give you a little, probably just a half sheet of paper, but a little handout that you won't find this information in Matthew or Mark or Luke. But I was assigned many years ago to go through and do an estimate of what the tribulation is really going to be like. And so I did. I like math. And I've had to revise my numbers over the years. When I first did it, the world's population was right around 6 billion. Now we're up past 8 billion. But I won't spoil that. I'll give you a handout of that next week. But let me tell you, so many people are going to die during that 7-year period. I don't know what they're going to do with the bodies. I mean, it's just the loss of life is just going to be mind-boggling. And that's the reason why Jesus, and I know these disciples, they didn't live to see any of that. But he's warning those that will live to see it. A couple of other things I will point out here. You look at the destruction that he describes in verses 27 through 30. As the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Turn the page. Wherever the carcass is, there the eagles are gathered. Actually, that means vultures. All right. And immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And what Jesus is describing here is some of the signs, again, additional disasters, things in the sun, moon, and stars being darkened and so forth, very much parallels the plagues that you see in Revelation chapters 8 and 9 and 16. And his phrase there, the coming of the Son of Man, is a direct quotation from Daniel chapter 7 and verse 13. And all the way back 500 years before the birth of Christ, God revealed to Daniel that the Messiah would come, and that at a point in time when Satan was trying to exterminate the Jewish people, that their Messiah would come and he would deliver them. Let me back up and point out one other thing. As this Antichrist has more and more sway and influence all across the globe, and we should be thankful that I don't think there will ever be a time that he controls every person in every place, but he'll come close to it. We often talk about a worldwide government and a worldwide religion. He'll get really close to that. There's been a lot of news recently about anti-Semitism. Any of you have heard that? Okay. This will be the biggest anti-Semitism that you've ever seen. I was not alive during World War II, but I remember studying it a whole lot about how many Jews died because of Hitler's hatred for the Jews. Hitler is just a foreshadowing of how the Antichrist will treat the Jews. And I often tell my students, it will be open season on Jews. And he will try to kill and destroy as many of God's people as is humanly possible. And you say, well, how can he do that? One of the scary things about advances in modern science is, just a prick of blood, probably not more than you would need to test your sugar. They can run your DNA. And it's been very interesting that there have been so many studies that have been done, especially on Jewish people, because they tend a lot of times more to marry and have children within their own confines. And so there's a very clear genome and genetic markers for Jewish people. And so it may be very easy during that 7-year period for them to say, you're a 1/64th Jew. But there will be immense persecution of the Jewish people. There will be immense persecution of anybody who helps the Jewish people. And so when it becomes illegal to buy, sell, or trade, or even to give food to somebody that's not going along with the Antichrist's plan, if you feed a Jewish person, let's say you're during that tribulation period and you think, well, they're still human beings, they deserve to be fed. If you feed a Jewish person, you could very well suffer the same fate that the Jews themselves do. It's going to be that kind of persecution. And I know there's a lot of persecution on the planet today. There's places you and I would not want to live. I wouldn't even want to visit North Korea, much less live there, okay? There's other places. I had a student that was from Saudi Arabia. I might want to visit Saudi Arabia once, but I wouldn't want to live in a predominantly Muslim country just because the culture is so opposite in many ways to ours. But in that day, the world itself will have turned against the Jews. The people that will defend them are going to be very, very, very few. And we'll look at that more when we get into some of the parables about the end times. But then you see that Jesus promises in verse 30, then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Mark tells us that at that time that the elect are gathered. In fact, it says the same here in Matthew 24 and verse 31. He shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. If you believe, as I do, that the rapture and the church is taken out at the beginning of the tribulation, who is he gathering here at this point? Okay? Anybody who has refused the mark of the beast and has put faith and trust in Jesus, but especially those Jewish people that have said, this guy's a false Christ. We can't follow him. And so, Jewish people that have refused the mark, especially, are going to be the elect that he gathers. And anybody else. I've totally bypassed the 144,000 Jewish witnesses. I think they're in the first half. They're all going to be martyred. Right? You have the example of the two witnesses in the last half of the tribulation. And they're going to be martyred too, just before the very end of all things. But you get to the end of the tribulation, and Jesus Christ comes back. All right, I'll mention one other thing, and then we'll kind of draw it to a close. I will hang around here afterwards in case I have opened up a can of worms and you got a question that you just can't live with until next Wednesday. Okay? But what was I going to say? No. Notice this. Jesus Christ comes back, and he delivers the Jewish people from absolute destruction. When he comes for the church in the rapture, as best we can tell, Jesus is not going to set foot here on this earth. It says that the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with him in the air, in the clouds, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. As far as we can tell, Jesus Christ doesn't come back at the rapture. As far as we can tell, the world doesn't see him. It's a big mystery. What happened to all those Christians? Hey, they may throw a party. Hey, the Christians are all gone. They probably will. They're going to throw a party when the two witnesses die. Right, so, but whatever. Jesus Christ isn't going to be seen. But when he comes at the end of the tribulation, he will be seen. And we'll pick it up there next Wednesday afternoon. So if you can, hold on to this little piece of paper. We're going to pick it up where it says Applications of Jesus' Answers. And I hope this hasn't made things unclear, but if it's a little unclear, give me a chance to come back next Wednesday, and I'll try to either make it more clear or muddy the water some more. The one thing you notice when you get farther down in Matthew chapter 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, Jesus tells his disciples, he said, be on guard, be watching. Now, I'm focusing that this is a Jewish Messiah giving the history of the Jewish people, the future of the Jewish people. But shouldn't you and I take to heart that simple warning and admonition to be watching? We believe that our Savior is coming back before the Jewish Messiah comes back and is revealed here on this earth. We believe that our Savior is coming back to take his bride, his church, out to be with him. And it could be today. So every morning when you get up, just tell yourself, maybe today. And go through the day as though it could be your last day to serve the Lord, your last day to witness to friends and co-workers. And just say, it could be today. All right? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the glimpse that you've given us into the future. Father, I'm thankful that it's not any more detailed. It's a powerful portrayal even as we have it. If we knew even more, we would probably be scared to death. But Lord, I'm especially thankful for the promise that as a body of believers we will be safe and not go through your wrath. And I'm also thankful that you will preserve a remnant of your people, the Jews, even as you have promised to do. And we look forward to that day that Jesus Christ comes back to this earth and destroys the Antichrist and the other forces that follow him. and they set up that promised kingdom. Lord, we look forward to that day. We look forward to the fact that you always keep your word. And so, Lord, help us to be looking and watching for that to happen.